Hi, this is Cheryl St.Pierre, and in this video we're going to make this adjustable herringbone weave ring. And I made this ring, this design, I'd say about 6 years ago, and I only made one, and I used smaller wire, and I came across it in my jewelry box the other day, and I'm going, I could make that ring better. And it took a few tries, and I experimented, and I think I have something that's worth doing now. Okay, so what you're going to need for supplies, I can't even get this in a snapshot. I'll move out. Okay. There we go. This ring is perfect for those that have large knuckles and smaller bones, so that you can get it over. Also, if your hands swell at times, you should be able to get it off. And it has a wonderful hugging effect. And it feels, you know how you've got big knuckles and you're smaller here, and then your rings flop all over the place? You're not going to have that issue with this ring. It's really, really good. It's durable. It's not going to fly off. I'm happy with the design. Okay, so you're going to need 8.5 inches of 18 gauge wire. And I didn't put that in metric. I'll be right back. I'll figure it out. Okay, so 8.5 inches in metric is actually 20.25 centimeters, but 20 centimeters is good enough for that. And that's 18 gauge, which is 1.02 millimeters of wire. My technique that I'm showing here is for dead soft raw copper, and I discuss options with sterling silver. And you're going to need 5 feet, which is 150 centimeters of 24 gauge wire, which is 0.51 millimeters of wire. And again, my techniques are for dead soft copper. And again, I will discuss what you could do with sterling silver. At this point, I honestly don't think this is a good option for coated wire, just because the core of the wire is copper, but it's too thin, that it doesn't get the strength we need to make it such a durable ring. So I really don't recommend it. Let's see, you're going to need a 6 millimeter round bead, and I recommend a gemstone bead. In this one, I have a fuchsia jade bead, and the bead I'm going to use is genuine turquoise. And this is a good design for opals and for, let's see what else is, some more delicate stones that can't handle impacts as much, because it actually protects the stone a little bit, and it's very gentle to the stone in the making of. But if you were to, malachite is the other one. Malachite is quite fragile. Yeah, there's a few out there that are fragile. You can Google it to see which ones are more fragile and which are more prone to breaking. And hematite is prone to breaking, but it makes awesome rings anyways. So what you need to make sure, though, is that 18 gauge wire will fit into the hole. Now, you're only using one bead, so this is a great way to use up some leftover beads from other projects, and you just, try them out one at a time, what will fit the wire, and there you go, and you're ready to use up those beads. For tools, you're going to need your traditional round nose pliers. I forgot to put ruler on here. You will need a ruler, chain nose pliers, flesh cutters or snips, metal ring mandrel with sizes, and this is what I mean. It has the sizes on it. Now mine's smooth. It's not engraved. So when you're buying yours, if you haven't bought yours already, it's good to have it where it's not dug in deep, because it can mar your work. It's just something to consider. And you're going to need a rawhide mallet and a cloth to protect your hands when we do some work with the wire. And I'm just using an old microfiber cloth. I wouldn't use a brand new one, just use an old one. Okay, so I think we're done with that. And I just wanted to talk, let's see, I'll talk about the wire as we go along. So I was just thinking, if you like this video, please subscribe and check out my memberships and see if you would like to join one of my memberships. I recommend the one with the retired videos. Okay, and so the first thing we're going to do is grab our ring mandrel and our copper wire. Okay, so this is the 18 gauge wire, and it's dead soft, but because it's 18 gauge, it's got a little bit of strength, but it's still too soft to make this a really durable ring. So we need to work hard on it. Now, if you were to use sterling silver, I would recommend buying half hard. And I have a little bit of extra here that if we have to snip off the ends, because sometimes we really mutilate the ends and then your bead won't go on. So what I'm going to do is I'm wrapping it close together, fairly close together, on a smaller size, and we're going to work hard on this. And if you had the sterling silver, I would recommend you're gonna have to figure out how much hardening you're gonna do. We're gonna do a fair bit on this. I honestly haven't made one with sterling silver to know exactly how much, but I'm going to be hammering this at the smaller size with the rawhide hammer, and I'm just spinning it around slowly. And I'm going to do this for about 4 or 5 minutes. And I'm not hitting super hard. I'm not... What's great about the rawhide is it doesn't mar the metal. And this is why you also need a metal mandrel instead of a plastic ring sizer. And it tends to stretch along as you work. It's getting bigger and bigger. I was at size 3, now I'm at 4.5. If it gets too big, I'm going to take it apart, straighten it out with the cloth, and wrap it around there again. So I'm going to go off now and finish this. Okay, so I've hammered for about 5 minutes, and now I'm going to take it off. And I managed to only spread it up to size 4.5. So I didn't have to take it off and straighten it at all. But if you did, this is kind of what the same process that you would do is what I'm doing now, which you would have to do again. I'm just checking. Oh, it's quite, I'm happy with how strong it is. Look at that. Okay, so with sterling silver, you would want to get the same type of strength. And silver has different properties than copper. I can't explain it. It's not as malleable. It gets brittle faster than copper does. Okay, so I want you to straighten it. And this is when your cloth comes in handy, because these don't want to straighten out at the end and you can cut your finger. So definitely have a cloth. You're going to need your chain nose pliers to hold one end of the wire. And I'm still backed off here, but I'm going to try and lift up my camera just to give myself a little bit more room. Okay. And now I'm just going to straighten it because we want it. And to straighten it, I'm going to show you. I'm actually bending it and pulling it straight like this. And I'm doing it in different directions constantly. And this actually work hardens it even more. But I'm doing the cloth to protect myself from getting cut. I have been cut doing this many times. And so I learned that it's important to have a cloth. Slipped out of my pliers. Sorry about that. And you see how what I mean by it gets at the end, doesn't want to straighten out. And that's to be expected. And that's why I gave you 8.5 inches instead of 8. So that if you need to cut off the ends to get an end to get your bead off, you can. Yeah, it slipped out of my pliers again. See, that end's kind of messed up a little bit too. And the reason I'm using the rawhide mallet instead of a metal mallet or metal hammer when I hammer is when we're putting the coiling on the wire, we need to be able to slide it. So if it's all marred up and misshaped, that's not going to work so well for us. So it's important. Okay, so it's not too bad. I'm not going to do the ends. Okay. I think that's good. So I have to snip off the end in order to get the bead on. I'm actually going to try. The end gets cut off anyway, so if it gets marred, it's okay. There. Now I can get the bead on. There, that one slid on really easy. My jade was a little bit tighter. Okay, so you want it situated in the middle. And now you're going to take your long piece of 24 gauge wire. Now, to discuss, this is dead soft, but I went with 24 gauge because we want it to be more durable. It can be more difficult in some ways to work with than the 26 gauge, excuse me, but in some ways easier now, if that makes any sense. So if you've done herringbone weave much, you'll probably figure it out pretty quick what I'm saying. And sometimes the herringbone weave takes practice, so be patient with yourself. And don't continue making the ring until you're happy with your herringbone. You can always cut more 24 gauge wire. And so practice with copper. Definitely try to do copper first before you do sterling silver, unless you are experienced with it. Okay, so I cinched up, I wrapped once, and I stitched up, and I'm going to actually zoom in a little bit there. Okay, so I've wrapped once. Now we're gonna slide that bead back to the center. The whole thing can be slid afterwards, so I mean, don't stress out about it. And I want to snip off the end. And I want to crimp that down just a little bit. Really, you don't need to worry about it here because beside the bead, it won't end up touching a person's flesh, but you never know. Oh, it spread apart on me. Okay. So traditionally, I tend to do kind of like an eye shape wrap for a ring. I like to go a little bit wider, so we're almost going like halfway, but not quite. So we're just going to wrap it around, holding the bead against, here, try and get centered there. I've got it pulled tight, holding it in place, wrap around there. Now, being tight, having your tension good is important. Okay. And now I'm going to do, and I want to show you, I'm not going quite half. For one, because both, they're bumping the phone. Okay, both wires are on top of this wire. So that automatically brings it up beyond half. So you can go pretty straight now. Normally, I try to do it even tighter than that, and then it gets more of an eye shape. And I'm, whoops, slid. Gotta hold it down like this. And I got it too closed there. So I want it like that, and I'm holding the wire, and I've got my tension nice and tight and wrapped around. So the first one is the hardest. And now I'm just making sure that this is sitting nice. Okay, and now if I went too far this way, you don't want to go like that because it affects the way your weave looks. So I'm moving it back up, straightening it out. You want straight wire. And a little bit of work hardening. Yeah, and I forgot to mention, with sterling silver, you would go dead soft, and then I would recommend work hardening it with a cloth for a little bit, so it has I wouldn't want to go half hard because it'd be too hard to work with. Dead soft will bend too easy when you wear the ring, so you want to work harden it a little bit. And you can compare the dead soft. You want it to feel just much like what dead soft 24 gauge copper is. Okay, so now I'm holding that, and see, it is sliding. That's okay. Don't stress about that. So you want it behind the wire, the top wire, but you want it, try to make it touch so it's nice and neat. So let's see if I can get that in focus. Okay, and now I'm holding it in place, pulling it tight, getting the tension, and wrapping it around. And sometimes you have to push there. Most times you don't, but you know, it doesn't hurt. And now I'm straightening this out. And I bent it up like that again. You have it nice and snugged up. Put my thumb on it, nice and tight. Wrap it around. Push it. Okay, so you always want to do even numbers of wrapping, and I have 4 wires. See, there's 4 on that side and 4 on that side, and it takes even number of the wraps. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I've done 4, so we're going to do 4 more. Okay, so I've got it nice and tight up against there again, holding my thumb over it to keep it in position, pulling it tight, and now it's moving upwards to get that herringbone look. Okay, straightening the wire. Oh, another thing what I wanted to say, with sterling silver, you only want to work harden the part that's doing the weave. So just do the first 1.5 feet of your wire, work harden it. Leave the rest softer because it'll make it easier to do the coiling. Okay, I'm gonna pull this way again because I always go too far that way and then it doesn't hug up as easy. Okay. Got my thumb on that. Nice and tight. Wrap it around and straighten. So now we have 3 wires on each side. Okay, and now I'm one more complete circuit. So 2 more times. So got that hugged up, nice and tight. Straighten that wire. Hugged up nice and tight. Nope, didn't work quite so well. Let's do it again. Nice and tight, thumb there. Okay. And the herringbone part is done. Okay, so now I want to center it. And I'm going to take my chain-os. I'm going to take my ruler. Maybe I am centered. Whoops. 4. Oh, I'm pretty close to center. Okay. So now we're going to do the coiling. Now coiling is much more difficult with 24 gauge. I normally never coil with 24 gauge. So I'm really finicky with this. So we're gonna go, when you do it, you don't want space around like we do with the smaller gauges. It's not as forgiving, and then you won't get the even look like I have on this ring. See how even that is? That's what you're aiming for. And so when you start out, you just do a few and then you cinch it up. And when you're doing it, you're trying to work as perfect as you can. Perfect as you can. And if you find you have a space, stop. And at first I only do a few. And then I cinch up just in case. Or if I found I had a space, I cinch up right away and pull it tight. And if I happen to go over another wire, I undo it and go back and redo it. Okay. But once I get myself going, and I'm pulling it fairly tight. Oh, I went over. See how I went back and straightened it? I usually, if it's going good, I usually do about 10 wraps and then cinch it up. Oh, I should try and get in camera. I can see I got spaces there. So this wire is less forgiving than the thinner gauge wire, and I'm straightening it out too. You need to constantly straighten it out, just like we did for the herringbone weave, because you want your wire to be fairly straight. Take your time. It's better to take your time and be happy with the job the first time than to speed through it and then have to check the whole thing out and start all over again. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm going to stop on camera now, and I'm going to continue, and I'll come back when I start the next side. Oh, I should mention, sorry, I am wrapping 2.5 inches, and 2.5 inches is 2.5 times 2.5. Hang on, I had it figured out. $2.10. Oh, I had it. 6.5, 6.25. Anyways, all you have to do, if you're metric, because my brain's not working right now, it's just 2.5 times 2.5, and that'll get you your centimeters. So 2.5 inches, and there's 2.5 centimeters in an inch. Okay, so go ahead and do your 2.5 inches, and I will be back when mine's done. Okay, I'm back, but when I went to measure it the last time, I got carried away, and here, I'll do it in inches, and I did 1/4 of an inch too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncoil, because we're trying to get both sides exactly the same. And I'm going to measure again. Still need to uncoil just a bit more. So for those that are doing it in metric, pick to the nearest millimeter and have both sides the same, because you need your ring to be the same on both sides. I think that should do it. Yeah, bang on. Okay, so now we are going to snip that as close to the wire as possible. There, and don't throw that wire away, because we're going to use it to coil on this side yet. Okay, and now I am going to crimp that really good, because we want it to be smooth, and I'm actually spinning in the direction that the coil's going, and tap a little bit as you go, and slide it along there, because you don't want any pokies. And when you do that, it goes completely flat, and it's not poking my finger anywhere. So that's important. Okay, and if you really want to, you could cinch it up one more time, because it tends to, when you work with it, it tends to loosen up. Okay, now the other side. Okay, so I have a lot of kinked up wire, and I'm going to just snip a portion of that off. And part of it will be a tail, so that's okay. And so I'm going to start closer to the end. We're going to end up sliding it over. You're going to wrap around once, and then we're going to cinch that together. And you need to keep this tail on right now, because if you snip it off, you can't wrap. You see, it's your anchor, and it's very important that you have it. So now you got to start like 1 or 2 wraps at first, because your fingers get in the way, and cinch it up, and it's a gentle beginning. And you try to do it as perfect as possible, but at the beginning it is difficult. Straighten my wire. cinch it up. See, this is the part where you need it to be sliding. I think I'm just about at the point where I can do 10 wraps if I'm careful, and then do the cinching. I had one spot where it's split apart on me. I don't know if you can see right there. Actually, there's a couple, but and I didn't cinch it up fast enough. This one turned out perfectly. I didn't get any splitting apart, but I mean, it's not bad. You can get worse than that. So I think I was trying to hurry. And I have a bit of a, if you've got that space, don't do the 10. Straighten my wire. Okay, so I'm going to continue until I have more. I'm going to slide it up a little bit to have more workspace, and I'll be back when I have almost all my, or have my 2.5 inches accomplished. Okay, I'm back, and I have 2.5 inches of coiling. It's not too bad looking. I see a little bit. That's not bad. And excuse me. So we're going to slide it over, but before we do, we have to snip off this tail, and we have to crimp it in like we did this other end, exactly the same way, so that it doesn't cut somebody's finger. So I'm just cutting it off as close as possible to the core wire. Or base wire, as some people say. And I'm just, oh, there's still poke there. It's hard to spin it around. I think I got it. So when it does that, it tends to flatten it a little bit. See if I can get it in there. You can see it's flattened it a little bit, and that's okay, because that's what makes it so that there's no more of a burr. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to slide this over so it touches the herringbone weave, and you're going to just grab your end of your wire with your pliers and slide it, and it slid really easy. Okay, and the next thing I'm going to do is, well, no, actually we're going to snip that off and crimp it in too, the same way. Getting ahead of myself. I ended up with a tail of about 7 inches, I'd say that is. So, which is good, because it makes it comfortable for your hand to oops. Good. No pokes. No matter what I do, there's no pokes. That's what you got to do. Now, pushing it right up to the herringbone weave, and that's what it looks like. Now, I'm going to take my ring mandrel, and when you make your rings, if you're going for a customer, excuse me, make it for the size that they ask for or a tiny bit smaller, because when they put it on their finger, they can stretch it a little bit. Too big is not too good, because the first time they put it on, they want it to fit. Okay, so ideally, like this is a size 7, and I've got that room there, and I just want to show you it's a little bit bigger than a size 7, and there we go. I'm going to go to a size 6, and I'm going to take this and push down the 2 sides of the weave, because we want to kind of marry that. I'm pushing down so that's trying to be equal. Now I'm trying to get in. Got it. I got this resting against my stomach. And you're doing it gently, and you want trying to get that flush and still keeping the weaving nice and neat. So we're being gentle, and you do it gradually. And we want both sides to be similar. And the weaving spread apart here, and I'm just going to cinch that down. And it's going to do that when people wear it. It tends to lift up sometimes, but it's easy enough to fix. And see, this one I did it a little bit tighter, and I didn't do it as tight with this one, so it shouldn't split apart as bad as this one did. But there, push it down. That is probably, no, oops, gotta push it a little bit more in it. Okay, it's gonna sit evenly. So I'm just letting you know that it's a process, that you're working at it. It's not an instant thing. Nope, that slid, and that's okay, because it slides back. Okay. Now, when you're holding it, and I could have done this step before bending it, and maybe I should have, but it doesn't really matter because it's equally done. Your top wire, when you do it, when you do this, we want the top wire, and basically that's the top now, and like this top, and then we're going to make a loop at the end, and it's going to go to the left. And then when we flip over, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to make it go to the left, because when we wrap it around the ring mandrel, we're going to start at this point, and then we're going to wrap around like this, and then that way both loops will be facing the right direction. Okay, so we want that sitting nice and level, and the wire hugged up, because this is the wire that's loose, hugged up. And you're going to take your round nose pliers now, and we want a fairly small loop. And I've actually gone into the weave a little bit, but I'm starting here. Now this is the same size that we make our ear wires with, that you make your your earring hooks. Okay, so nice and small, and I'm starting off like this, and so that the coiling bends a little bit, because it looks nicer that way. And now I'm going to grab this and bend it like that. So it looks like that. So a little bit of coiling, but not all coiling. And then I'm going to take the flush cutters, and you want the flush part to be flush. That's the flat part, right? And you're going to cut right in there because you want the flattest part to be part of the ring. So I'm going like that. And now I'm taking my chain nose pliers and I'm just going to wiggle it into place so that the wire, and I'm trying not to hurt the coiling, but I'm wiggling it back and forth just like you do when you close a jump ring so that it touches the coiling. And see, there's no sharp pokes, no sharp pokes. And then you might have to, so when we hold this, is it sitting level? No, it's sitting at an angle. That's where you need your chain nose pliers and level it off. You might have to do this more than once. And I'm being gentle because I don't want to wreck the coiling. But we might have to do that later on too. So now we're flipping it over for the other part, and we're going to go to the left again. See this one, when I hold it like that right now, it's going to the right. So going to the left. Oh, this was the slidey one. Okay, so the slidey one, you got to make sure that it's right up against the herringbone, and take your round nose pliers and grab it again. I've got it right at the edge of the coil. And I'm bending it so that a little bit of the coil turns into it. And then I'm finishing off the loop by pulling this with my hand so that it looks like that. Snip it. Take the chain nose pliers and do that wiggle thing again. Wiggle, 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 and push at the same time. Wiggle, wiggle, and push. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we want this to be, I've got, how could I show you how I'm doing this? Okay. I'm going to the edge of the table, but I can't show you the edge of the table. So I'm going to use my coil wire and show you. Let's pretend this is the edge of the table. I want this level, and I'm just gently pushing it like this. And it's malleable enough that I can, and just so that it's straight, that if it got bent a little bit, and you can do it from both sides. Okay, so it's looking pretty good. Now you're going to take your ring mandrel, and we're going to start with a small size. This may be awkward for me here on camera. I'm going to start, so I'm going for size 7. I'm going to start at a 5. And so I've got my P going to the left. And then because I'm right-handed, I'm also making the coil go to the left. Now you could have had this mandrel facing, I think I did with the other one is I'm having it face the other way around, but it's easier for me to hold it on camera this way. Okay. And wrap it around. Okay, so it's a little bit messy here, and you just take your fingers and coil it around. Push that weave down if you need to. Tightening it. And now I'm going to push the weave down even more. I'm taking my rawhide mallet and not hammering. I'm just putting pressure against right here right here, putting pressure to that side, flip it around to the other side. Okay, now I'm going to take it, got it at about size 6.5. Put it together a little bit, and then you hammer it gently. And you could, I'm very gently hammering it there. And then you can hear I'm going harder. And realize that I'm not at the size where I was, because that would make it too big. And then I'm going to spread this out a little bit so I don't hit the herringbone weave. And do that. And that'll actually level that out a little bit. And then it's going to go back. I'm going to flip this around and do the same thing for this one. And that leveled that out. Now, I find I have a little bit of a sharp edge there. I'm going to try and fix that with the pliers first. And then if I can't, I will take a file, a metal file, and file it out. Hopefully I won't have to. I didn't have to with the other one. Okay, so I'm bigger than a size 7 now. I'm going to go back down to a size 5 and tension it up. Whoops. Just like that. See, now I'm at a 6.5. Isn't that nice? Okay, so I'd say that's pretty nice. Okay, so this is meant for a size 7, but you can, I'm just showing the adjustability and see how it looks, and see it still looks good at an 8, and it's even looks good as a 9. Not very many women have a size 9 hand. So now all I have to do to make it smaller again is just tighten it up on the ring mandrel like this. And a person would tighten it up the same way on their finger. They just push, 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 and it tightens up. So if I put it on a smaller finger, like it's really, really big on that finger, I would gently push it like this, and I could work it into place. And it's still a little bit big. That's why I really, I've done an adjustable rings, several for a customer, and I always ask her what size she wants it. She goes, but it's adjustable. You don't need to know what size it is, because you want that starting point. You want it to fit their finger. And yes, it can get bigger and it can get smaller, but you want it to be, see, they could do this too. Just coil it up. That worked. It's still a tiny bit loose, but yeah, that's all it takes. So I'm just gonna, again, go to my smaller size, and I'm gonna hammer it until I feel it's strong enough. Because remember, you want it to have quality and durability. And this is not a ring that's just going to fall off somebody's hand or get snagged and ripped off. It just, the design will prevent that. So let's see how that is now compared to this one. I think this one's a little bit more durable, so I'm just going to work harden it a little bit more, tighten it up a little bit more, because it's right at size 7. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. And the reason why I'm showing this is because I want you to see how I do the checks. And that you just keep going. You don't stop. You wait till it's strong. Does more than you realize. Oh, there we go. Perfect. It's perfect. What size are we at? Exactly size 7. And there, it's done. Okay, well, thank you for joining me in this video. I hope you find it useful, and I hope you try and make many of these rings. And now that I've made a couple of rings on with this phone holder successfully, maybe I'll do some more rings, because I do have some more ring designs I want to do. So, okay, well, thank you for joining me. God bless, and we will see you in the next one. Bye for now.